Hello, everyone, and welcome back. You're watching Fluent English Power, the best place to make English learning easy and fun. I'm Luna.
And I'm Mason. It is truly fantastic to have all of you joining us for another exciting lesson today. We have so much to share.
We really do, Mason. We love creating these conversations for you. Helping you feel confident in English is our passion.
That's right. Before we jump in, if you like our lessons, please share this video, subscribe to our channel, and give us a thumbs up. Your support is everything.
Today, we are tackling a really universal frustration for anyone learning a new language, specifically English fluency. If you are one of the millions of people who can read a complex article or, watch an advanced movie and understand, say, 95% of it, but then the moment you actually try to speak, your brain just freezes up. Well, this deep dive is for you. We know that feeling. It's like the gears just grind to a halt. You know the words, but they refuse to come out. Not quickly, not naturally. So our mission today, using these fascinating sources, is to pull out the specific brain training techniques that promise to solve this. We're looking for the exercises that bypass that agonizing hurdle and create fast, effortless, and just genuinely natural English speech.
Okay, so let's unpack the main problem here because the sources are really precise about this. They call it the translation trap.
The translation trap. That sounds exactly like what happens when you're under pressure, trying to order food in a busy restaurant or something.
Exactly.
That moment when the person is waiting and your mind just goes blank. Silence.
That silence is the translation trap. It's the mental habit that just sabotages fluency. And here's what's happening in those few agonizing seconds. You want to say something in English, right? But your brain defaults to this really complex multi-step process. First, you form the entire idea perfectly in your native language. Then, step 2, you start translating it word for word, worrying about grammar. And only then, third, do you actually try to speak it in English.
And that delay is what creates the hesitation, the nervousness. It's why the speech feels so slow. It sounds like you're trying to drive a car while also rebuilding the engine.
That's a perfect analogy. And the most important takeaway, I think, from this entire stack of sources is that the single goal of any good fluency technique is, well, it's simple. You have to eliminate that middle translation step. We need to create a direct wire from the thought straight to the English speech.
Learning how to think in English, not just translate to English.
Precisely.
So, okay, how do we start rewiring that pathway? The first technique the material really emphasizes is, well, it's one that gets overlooked a lot just because of its simplicity. It's called the small sentence method. And what I love about this is that it requires absolutely zero prep. No partners needed. The practice starts the moment you wake up.
The power here is all about consistency and kind of elevating your thoughts.
Yeah.
You're deliberately forcing your brain to stop just thinking in single words. Normally when we see something, our brains just label it with a noun, right, in our native language, like car or coffee, phone.
Yeah.
The small sentence method demands you push that single word into a complete usable bit of language. You're training the brain to see that every object, every action exists inside an English sentence.
So instead of your brain just thinking coffee, you immediately form the full thought. The sources have these perfect little examples, things like, I am making coffee, or the water is hot. When you look at your phone, you think, my phone is on the table. Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate for a second. If I'm an intermediate learner, why would I waste my time on these tiny basic sentences? Shouldn't I be focusing on, complex vocabulary?
That is a fundamental question, and the answer is all about repetition and speed. Access speed. You aren't wasting time, you're building the foundation for speed. Think about it. Complex sentences are just built out of small sentences. If you hesitate for 2 seconds over whether to say, I am making coffee or I make coffee, you've already lost the flow for the more complex thought that was supposed to follow.
That makes sense.
This method works because it teaches your brain that English isn't some, abstract concept from a book. It's real. It builds a direct high-speed bridge between your actual environment, the kitchen counter, the feeling of the hot mug, and the English words for it. That connection to real life makes recall so much faster, becomes automatic. You're training yourself to articulate the world, not just describe it for a test.
We're basically transforming English from an academic subject into an internal narrator. Okay, so if we're training the brain to think in English, it needs the right material to work with. And that brings us perfectly to the second big idea, which the sources call strategic input.
Right, input.
And we're talking about listening and reading. The material frames this as feeding your brain with quality fuel so it can grow. But here's the interesting part. There's a really strict rule. The input has to be easy for you.
And this is a critical point. It's where a lot of really motivated learners get tripped up.
Right, because you feel like you should be pushing yourself.
Exactly. We feel like we should listen to complex news broadcasts or read difficult books because, hard work equals progress. But the brain has a limited capacity for just decoding. If the content is too difficult, say you understand less than 85% of it, your brain spends all its energy just translating, just guessing what words mean.
So you're not actually absorbing the language.
Yeah. You're not. That effort leads to cognitive overload, frustration, and pretty soon, you just tune out. The goal is acquisition, not just decoding.
Okay, so strategic input means high comprehension is priority one. What are the best sources for this kind of easy language?
The recommendations are pretty straightforward. Simple English songs, podcasts on topics you already know a lot about.
Ah, so you already have the context.
You already have the context. Or videos about things you love. If you love cooking, watch a simple English cooking vlog. The focus has to be on just getting lots of comprehensible exposure.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. Why is watching a video, say, better than just reading an article? What's happening in the brain when we get that visual and auditory stuff paired together?
This is the pattern formation insight, and it's really profound. When you just read a list of words, your brain has to work hard to connect that abstract word to a meaning. But when you watch the cooking vlog and the host says, "I'm cutting the onion," at the exact moment their hand is slicing an onion.
You see it and hear it at the same time.
Yes. Your brain is linking the visual, the sound, and the grammar all at once, simultaneously. It creates these incredibly strong linguistic patterns in your subconscious.
Yeah.
You acquire the structure and the vocabulary passively, organically, because the real-world context just anchors the phrase for you. You don't need to translate cutting the onion because your brain has already connected the phrase to the action.
It's a real-time feedback loop. It's like your brain is collecting data points, building these maps that link sound directly to meaning, and it bypasses your native language completely. But input alone isn't enough, right? No matter how strategic. We have to move from just understanding to actually producing the language.
Yes.
Which brings us to the third technique and, well, frankly, the most awkward one, output alone.
This one goes right to that universal complaint. I don't have a practice partner, so I can't speak. And the sources are so insistent on this, you are your own best partner.
Okay, but I have to ask the question that I know everyone is thinking. Isn't talking to yourself just rehearsing your own mistakes?
Yeah.
And doesn't it feel ridiculous?
That's a great question, a necessary one. First, about the awkwardness. Yes. It feels strange at first, but you have to see this as physical practice, like training for a sport. You wouldn't skip your training just because someone might see you struggle. And second, on rehearsing mistakes. You aren't aiming for perfect grammar here. You are aiming for speed, for accessibility. The practice should be simple enough that the chance of making a huge error is actually pretty low.
And if you do make a mistake?
The advice is simple. Smile, correct yourself quickly, and keep going. The value of doing this is so much greater than the risk of, cementing some minor error.
So what does this self-talk actually look like practically?
It's narrating your own life out loud in really simple, everyday situations. While you're folding laundry, driving to work, organizing your desk, you use those full descriptive sentences we talked about before.
The examples the experts give are so mundane, they're perfect. They say to use sentences like, now I am picking up the blue towel, I am folding it carefully, I need to put the clothes in the drawer.
Or, while you're at your computer, I am opening the laptop, this email is from my manager, I need to reply quickly.
Simple narration.
And this self-talk has a dual benefit. First, it builds crucial muscle memory in your mouth. Speaking a new language. It requires training the muscles in your mouth, your jaw, your throat to move in ways that are unnatural for your native tongue.
So it's a physical skill.
It is absolutely a physical skill. You need the practice for the sounds to come out smoothly. And second, and this is so tied to confidence, it trains your ear to get used to the sound of your own English voice.
That's a big one.
It is. So many learners feel self-conscious because their accent or their cadence just sounds unfamiliar to them. By talking to yourself all the time, you normalize it. You remove a huge psychological barrier that causes hesitation when you're with other people.
You're turning the internal voice into an external, normal one. Okay, so we have the tools. Small sentences, strategic input, and self-talk. But what's the blueprint for making this work day to day? This gets to the whole sprint versus marathon idea.
The overall strategy is really just consistency over intensity. A lot of people think they need to block out like 3 hours on a Saturday for English study, but the research is very clear that this is less effective.
Right. They specifically say that 10 to 15 minutes of focused practice every single day is so much better than that one huge session once a week.
The brain needs that persistent, gentle exposure to really lock in the learning patterns, especially the muscle memory and the automatic linking we were talking about.
That daily habit, that consistency, it sounds non-negotiable. But what about frustration? When the words just aren't coming out right. How do we manage that?
We have to talk about the fear of mistakes, because that's what stops people from doing the output part. And this brings up a really important question. How should we think about errors?
How do we reframe them?
Exactly. And the advice here is so supportive. It reframes the entire idea of failure. Mistakes aren't failures. They're just proof that your brain is actively stretching, learning, and growing.
They're data points.
They're data points. If you make an error, the fastest way to get better is not to panic or feel embarrassed. It's to just smile, correct it, and move on. That mental resilience, that acceptance of being imperfect, is just as important as the vocabulary itself.
That's liberating advice. You're not being graded, you're just being rewarded for trying. So the journey to fluency is really about killing that translation trap through these small, consistent, daily acts of practice. Think in small sentences. Feed your brain easy input that links sound to action, and crucially, talk to yourself out loud every day.
That's the formula.
And remember, you already have the comprehension. You have the power to become a fast, natural speaker. It just means embedding these almost physical habits into your daily routine and committing to that 15 minutes.
And for our final thought today, we want you to immediately apply the most practical step from this whole deep dive. Don't wait until tomorrow. Don't wait until you find a partner. We want you to start the self-talk practice right now. Look around where you are, your desk, your kitchen, wherever, and just identify the next simple action you're going to take. What is one mundane thing you are going to narrate in English today?
Maybe describing your next snack or organizing the papers on your table.
Exactly. Begin training that muscle memory and reinforcing those small sentences immediately. That's where the real brain training begins.